I'm Henry R. Mockingbird, your host with the mustache. And you know, the sequel to Enchanted, Disenchanted, is coming out. So now is a perfect time to review the first movie that Disenchanted is a sequel to. Enchanted. So, let's get this modern classics review going. The plot. The film takes place in the fairy tale world of Andalasia, where a forest maiden named Giselle is hanging out with her woodland creature friends, until she ends up falling head over heels in love with Prince Edward. So it's literally love at first sight. So they decide to get married the very next day. But when Giselle goes to Edward's castle, she has a run-in with Prince Edward's evil stepmother. She ends up pushing her down a well, and she goes falling down the well until she transforms into the body of a realistic, beautiful human woman, played by Amy Adams. And she ends up finding herself in the real life world of New York City. She eventually ends up meeting a divorce attorney named Robert and his daughter Morgan, and she ends up crashing at his apartment until her so-called true love comes to rescue her. That, of course, being Prince Edward. Personal history and opinion. The year was 2007. Little kid version of me was watching TV. And I came across this TV spot following, of all things, a Domino's commercial.
This Thanksgiving, the animated world is about to collide with our world. What? And New York City isn't big enough. Oh my gosh, for all of us.
Any last words before I dispatch you? You have got to be kidding me.
Walt Disney Pictures presents the motion picture event of the holidays.
I'm coming, my love! I've been dreaming.
Enchanted, ready.
You could say that little kid version of me was very weirded out by this. So I got my mother to come into the sunroom to take a look at this TV spot. And she confirmed everything in the TV spot. So little kid version of me and her went to go see the movie. And ever since then, I have loved it ever since. It is one of my favorite Disney movies. Not only do I find it to be a great satire, but I find it to be a loving tribute to Disney and everything that came before. The production history. The movie originally started as a script written by Bill Kelly and was intended for Touchstone, the company behind such films as Turner and Hooch, Splash, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Sister Act, Tim Burton's Ed Wood, Dick Tracy, The The Nightmare Before Christmas, and Romeo and Juliet. And the film itself was a lot different from what it ended up being. It was actually more adult in nature, with the humor being more on the lines of something like Fast Times at Ridgemont High and American Pie. I mean, hell, even the premise was a lot more adult in nature. With Giselle, when she gets to New York City, she's mistaken for a stripper. And the movie was even intended for an R rating. And thank goodness that was not the film we ended up getting. I feel like we dodged a bullet by not getting that version, given Disney's previous attempts at juvenile humor with Meet the Deedles. And I guess the powerhouse that is Disney must have thought so too, since they got many people to rewrite the script for the movie. The first being Rita Shaw, who also wrote the script for Toy Story 2 and the 1998 Mulan. Another was Ted Alscott, who for some reason looks like a guy who would appear on Red Letter Media, who also wrote the script for Ants. Hell, there was even a point in time where the creative duo of Mark Macaulay and Bob Schooley, the creators of Kim Possible, were brought on board to do a rewrite. And there was even a point in time when Disney was considering casting Kate Hudson and Reese Witherspoon in the role of Giselle. The film also went through many directors, including Rob Marshall, John Turteltaub, yes, that's actually how you pronounce his name, who worked alongside Jerry Bruckheimer on Nicolas Cage's The National Treasure, Adam Shankman, the director of Hairspray, who oddly enough is directing the sequel Disenchanted. Anyways, the movie finally fell into the hands of Kevin Lima, director of a Goofy movie, Tarzan, and 102 Dalmatians. Guess they all can't be winners. And both him and Bill Kelly decided to write the final script. And they decided to make the film into an homage to classic Disney movies and everything that came before. The animation. During the making of Enchanted, Disney had not yet reopened their hand-drawn animation department. So a lot of the animation ended up going to James Baxter, who ended up doing the animation for the beginning and end of the film. He also did character animation for Belle in Beauty and the Beast, Rafiki in The Lion King, and Quasimodo in The Hunchback of Notre Dame. He not only did animation for Disney, but DreamWorks, doing animation for such films as The Prince of Egypt, Road to El Dorado, Spirit, Stallion of the Cimarron, and even did the opening animation for Kung Fu Panda. The animation in both the beginning and the end of the movie is great. It harkens back to old Disney films like Snow White and Sleeping Beauty, while giving a more updated modern touch. It also uses old techniques such as model sheets for the characters, as well as oil and watercolored painted backgrounds. The animation is so good that when the animated characters enter the real live world of live action, the casting is so good and so spot on that it's downright uncanny. I mean, every actor fits the character, especially in their looks. The characters and cast. First, there's Giselle, played by Amy Adams, who I may or may have not had a crush on at the time. Oh, screw it. Amy Adams was my first celebrity crush. Yeah, I said it, and I'm not afraid to admit it. Giselle is a very hard character to play. Amy Adams should have gotten an Oscar nomination given how difficult it is to play this character. It would have been so easy to make her so over the top to the point of annoyance. Or go down the route of Splash or Hocus Pocus, where they have her do a bunch of fish out of water jokes. This role would have been so disastrous if it was put in the wrong hands. But thankfully, they do not go in that direction. She's whimsical, childish, and optimistic, often looking on the bright side of things. Even when she first arrives in New York, where pretty much she's in a world that she knows nothing about, and everyone's being mean to her, Giselle really goes through a character arc and changes quite a lot through the film. 3 specific examples come to mind. The first is when the very first time she's getting angry. She's getting ticked off. She's feeling real human emotions. She's becoming more real and human. Another good example is when Edward asks Giselle to finish their duet, and she starts thinking. Thoughts go through her head. But by far the best example of Giselle's character arc is when she's in the ballroom staring down at Robert, looking like she's about ready to cry, knowing that she's fallen in love with him and that if she goes back to Andalasia, she has to marry a man she does not love. Now let's talk about Robert, who is basically the polar opposite of Giselle. He's more down to earth and grounded in reality. He's more realistic. He doesn't believe in either hopes nor dreams. And he's often trying to ground his daughter, Morgan, in reality. To pretty much flat out, simply put it, Giselle is more of the optimist, while Robert is more of the realist, as well as pessimistic. And then there's Robert's girlfriend, Nancy, played by Idina Menzel. Oh, I hope she's wicked. Come on. It was either that or a frozen joke. And those are old hash. There's Prince Edward, played by Cyclops himself, James Marsden. Prince Edward is brave, daring, competent, but at the same time very conceited and overconfident in himself. But that's part of the joke. And speaking of jokes, Prince Edward is the funniest character in the movie. Of course, he's the one who's subjected to all the fish out of water jokes, but they're pretty damn funny and they all land. And then there's his evil stepmother, Nerissa, played by Susan Sarandon, best known for her role in the Rocky Horror Picture Show. The best way I could describe Nerissa as a character, imagine if somebody decided to put the Wicked Queen from Snow White and Maleficent and just throw them into a blender, and that should give you some kind of idea of what she's like. And ironically, Nerissa is a better Maleficent than Angelina Jolie's Maleficent. And unlike Angelina Jolie's Maleficent, she actually turns into a dragon. And then there's Nerissa's henchman, played by Timothy Spall. He's not a bad guy. He's a nice guy. He knows what he is doing is wrong, and I mean really wrong, but he's only doing it to impress Nerissa. You know that he's not doing any of his evil deeds just because he's evil. You know he would never want to hurt either Giselle nor Edward. To the point where he starts asking himself, what the hell am I doing working for this evil chick? There ain't gonna be no future after this is all over. There ain't gonna be no happily ever after. And he just realizes it ain't worth it. And he drags his ass to the ballroom and double crosses her and reveals her evil plan. Fun fact, there's a deleted scene where Nathaniel is talking to Pip in the car and he comes to his revelation. I kind of wish this scene was in the movie. The humor. The humor in this movie is very funny, often mocking certain Disney tropes and cliches. And then there are the references. Oh, so many references galore. In fact, there are so many references to this film alone. You could literally make a drinking game out of it. In fact, I think I'll try that at the end of this review. Funny enough, the one film that this humor's compared to is Shrek. Why? Just because they both mock, parody, and reference Disney films? Well, Shrek feels more like a middle finger to Disney, which is downright understandable when you consider the head of DreamWorks, Jeffrey Katzenberg, was screwed over by Disney when he was turned down for a promotion. That's not to say that the humor in both Enchanted and Shrek isn't funny. It definitely is. But the way that Shrek mocks and parodies other Disney films, and the way Enchanted references and parodies other Disney films is night and day. The way it parodies and references Disney films feels like an homage to Disney rather than Disney giving themselves the middle finger. The humor in this movie is more self-aware. It knows that it's being sappy and sugary, but it has fun with it. It celebrates the cliches and tropes that Disney films have made. Not only do we get references, but also cameos. You see that secretary standing next to Robert? Yeah, that's Jodie Benson, the voice of Ariel from The Little Mermaid. And you see that actress on the TV? That's Paige O'Hara, the voice of Belle from Beauty and the Beast. And if that weren't enough, you also have Julie Andrews, who played Mary Poppins, and you know Mary Poppins, doing narration for the film. Production values, effects, and costumes. As far as production values, effects, and costumes go, you have everything. You have green screen effects, handmade sets, makeup, stuntmen, CGI, the works. As far as the CGI goes, Amy Adams had to act to practically nothing until the CGI birds and rats and bugs were composite in. And when the dress would move, they would have a cage rig for the dress to twirl around. The only problem was that Amy would be stuck on the ground for hours at a time as they shot this. And once she got in that rig, boy, could she not get out. In fact, there was a lot of combination of CGI and practical. Like, you might think that those brushes that the rats are holding are CGI, but nope, they were real. There was not only CGI animals, but there were also a couple of optical effects, as well as actually using real birds and rats. And I cannot imagine how it must have smelled in that apartment with all that rat crap and bird crap. A great thing about this movie is the costumes, particularly Giselle's dresses, each one showing her in her development, leading up to the purple dress. And I heard some people say they don't like this dress, and they say it's disappointing compared to the ones that came before this one. And I just do not understand where they're coming from. This dress looks beautiful. There's a reason it was used at the Hollywood premiere of the film. In fact, all the costumes in this movie were done by Muan Main, who also did the costumes for Clueless, as well as The Wedding Singer starring Adam Sandler, and Eddie Murphy's Haunted Mansion. And you know the live-action version of the old hag? Yeah, that's Susan Sarandon under makeup and prosthetics. And it is so good you can't even tell it's her under all that makeup and prosthetics. The makeup in this movie was done by creature and makeup effects legend Rick Baker, the guy who also did the makeup and effects for Men in Black, as well as doing the makeup effects for Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes, the 2010 remake of The Wolfman, a personal guilty pleasure, The Grinch starring Jim Carrey, Hellboy, as well as Maleficent. And as for the ballroom set, they built it and constructed it by hand. And for it, also had a stunt man for Prince Edward whenever he got flinged back. And as for the scene in where Nerissa turns into a dragon, that took careful planning. They had to plan all that out. And the CGI used for Nerissa, the people who worked on that dragon worked their hearts out. And as far as CGI creatures go, you have Pip the Chipmunk, who kind of has this Robin Williams genie thing going for him. And you know that tower that Nerissa climbs on? Yeah, even that tower, that building was CGI too. And for the scenes in where Edward's being held on by Nerissa, Patrick Dempsey had this big-ass tube around him. Very King Kong-like, if you will. As far as the scene in where Giselle is climbing the roof after Nerissa, Amy Adams had to have a rod that was connected to her dress. She had to climb up a giant-size scaled miniature roof with a blue screen in front of it, while water was being poured down from upstage. She was, to coin the phrase, soaked to the skin while shooting this scene. The songs. And if Enchanted wasn't Disney enough, the songs for Enchanted were written by Alan Menken, the guy who also wrote the songs for Little Shop of Horrors, The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and Tangled. And let us listen to them. The first song in the movie being True Love's Kiss.
I've been dreaming of a true love's kiss, and a prince I'm hoping comes with this. That's what brings ever after being so happy. And that's the reason we need lips so much, for lips are the only things that touch. So to set the life of endless bliss, just find who you love through true love's kiss.
And then there's the next song, Happy Working Song.
Come, my little friends, as we all sing a happy little working song. Merry little voices, clear and strong. Come and roll your sleeves up, so to speak, in the kitchen. Cleaning product in the kitchen as we sing along. And to fill a cheery tune in the tub as we scrub a stubborn mildew stain. Like a hairball from the shower drain to that gay refrain of a happy working song.
The next musical number is That's How You Know.
How does she know you
people looking.
She's yours.
Don't sing. Yeah. How does she know that you love her?
Oh.
He knows the song too?
How do you show her you love her?
How does she know that you really, really,
Truly love her.
I've never heard this
How
song.
does she know that you love her? How do you show her you love her?
Really nice work.
How does she know that you really, really,
Took care of it. Let's go.
truly
Okay.
love her? It's not enough to take the one you love for granted. You must remind her or she'll be inclined to say, how do I know he loves me? How do I know he's mine?
And then there's the Oscar-nominated song So Close, sung by John McLaughlin. And let's take a listen.
So close together, and when I'm with you, so close to feeling alive. Our life goes by, romantic dreams must die. So I'll be mine goodbye and never knew. So close, waiting here with you. And now, forever I know.
The problems. Problem with this movie would have to be the climax. After Nerissa turns into a dragon, she starts announcing aloud every trope and cliche Disney has created in their book. And the way she announces them is so annoying and is about as subtle as having a dragon being dropped on you. But it's only a small problem and doesn't distract from the rest of the movie. Final verdict. This movie has held up fairly well. And for that, I give it 5 gold stars. Episode of Modern Classics. Now, if you excuse me, I'm going to try out that drinking game I suggested earlier. I'm going to proceed with the enchanted drinking game. Take your first sip when they reference opening the book. Take your second sip when they reference Alice going down the rabbit hole in Alice in Wonderland. Take a sip each time they reference Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Take 2 extra sips when they reference Cinderella. Take 2 more sips when they reference Sleeping Beauty. Take 3 more sips when they reference the Little Mermaid. You might want to take 1 more sip when Jodie Benson, the voice of Ariel, shows up. Take a sip each time they reference Beauty and the Beast. Take an extra sip when they reference the chandelier from the ballroom scene in Beauty and the Beast. And drink the whole cup when they reference Paige O'Hara, the voice of Belle, on that TV.